Tell me one thing before we get started. Do you honestly know anybody who does not love a piece of homemade bread fresh out of the oven with butter? Because I certainly do not. Everybody loves it, and no wonder. We have been eating bread as our main staple food since before recorded history. And I am here to tell you, it is not that hard to make. And you yourself can produce a beautiful, delicious, and healthy loaf of sourdough bread. The bread we eat today, for the most part, is made with commercial yeast for a rising agent. This means you can cook more bread more quickly. This method became popular in the 1950s to help sustain the rapidly growing populations of North America and Europe. Traditional bakeries disappeared in the wake of industrial outputs that could pump out thousands of loaves of Wonder Bread and other sourdough and other yeast-based products per day. The art of sourdough baking almost disappeared, but a revival took place in the late 1990s, and now you can find a traditional bakery fairly easily. The best part, sourdough baking is not hard. I will admit, it takes some knowledge, some proper equipment, and not to mention proper ingredients, but all can be obtained fairly easily. What you're going to need: flour. I use an unenriched, strong white flour. You will need whole grains. I use Coruscant, hard white, hard red, and rye. You will need salt, water, and your starter. If you're going to use seeds, you can use pumpkin, sunflower, and poppy. They're optional. Tools. You're going to need a proper oven, 2 Dutch ovens, which are essentially cast iron pots with lids. You'll need parchment paper. You'll need a kitchen scale, a kitchen mill, a proofer, a timer, 2 banneton baskets, which are basically little wicker bowls, and a glass container with a lid to hold your starter. First thing, feed your starter. Every good starter is given a name, so start thinking of something that sums up the characteristics of your particular starter. Starter is what was traditionally used in place of yeast. It is what makes the bread rise. Starter is basically a mixture of flour and water that has been allowed to ferment in your fridge for a few weeks and is now a living substance. Pull it out in the evening before you plan to start making your dough. Take out 50 grams and throw the rest away. I know it's painful. Add 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour and mix vigorously and store in a dark, cool place overnight. Your starter should start to grow and double in size. In the morning, repeat this process, this time using 100 grams of each instead of 50. Now, time to mill. Measure out your whole grains. I use 200 grams of Coruscant or kamut, 200 grams of hard white, 50 grams of hard red, and 50 grams of rye. Pour into your kitchen mill and turn on. Once milled, measure again. You need 500 grams of milled flour. Add water. I use 750 to 780 grams of water, which is referred to as 75 to 80% hydration. Mix with a spoon. If you are using seeds, now is the time to add them. Cover your mixture and let sit. This process is called autolyzing and is very important to developing good flavor. The water is softening the coarsely milled grains and extracting all the rich flavors. Some recipes call for a 12 or even a 24-hour autolyze. The rule is at least half an hour, more if possible. I try for at least 2 to 3 hours if I have time. While waiting, measure out 500 grams of flour, 20 to 22 grams of salt, and get your starter out. Once your mixture has autolyzed for a sufficient length of time, add 260 to 280 grams of your starter and mix into the dough. Then add the salt and white flour and stir well for 10 minutes. The dough will become thick. Form into a ball. Cover in your bowl for 30 minutes. While you're waiting, you'll need to prep your starter to be stored. There will be some remnants in the starter jar. Simply add 50 grams water, 50 grams of flour, and mix vigorously to oxygenate. And let sit half an hour to 1 hour before putting back into your fridge. It should chill until you are ready for your next batch next week. Put an elastic band around the jar at the level where your starter is sitting. If the starter has doubled in size and is beginning to recede, then you may need to take it out and feed it, as this means it is beginning to starve and will not rise properly. Back to the bread. Once 30 minutes is up, we are going to press and fold. This process is replacing the laborious task of kneading your bread for long periods of time. All you do is grab a side or corner of your dough while it is still in the bowl, stretch it upwards without tearing the dough, then fold it back down over the rest of your dough. Turn the bowl a quarter turn and repeat this process 3 more times. This traps air into the structure of your dough, which will create flavorful gases when baking. Let sit covered for another 30 minutes and repeat this process. Do a total of 4 press and folds. After the final one, put your dough into a container with a lid and put this into a cooler, preferably with 1 or 2 ice packs. Let sit overnight. This process is called the cold or bulk fermentation and is a vital step toward your mixture fermenting properly. As with autolyzing, the longer the better, 10 to 12 hours minimum. This step must be monitored carefully. If the temperature is too warm and the dough is left to sit too long, the dough will peak and begin to recede, which means it will not rise properly and is essentially dying. In the morning, check your dough. It should have grown and have bubbles on the surface, indicating your dough is healthy. Divide into 2 equal halves, cover and let sit for 30 minutes. Form into nice loaf shapes and tension by sliding each loaf toward you on the counter with your hands around the back to stretch the surface. This will cause the surface to crack when baking, which is a signature sourdough look. Repeat this 4 times for each loaf. Now, carefully pick up the loaves and put into your lightly floured banneton baskets. Then put in the proofer at 80 degrees Fahrenheit for 2.5 to 3 hours. Preheat your oven. Put your Dutch ovens inside to warm them. Cut 2 pieces of parchment paper that will fit inside the Dutch ovens. Take 1 loaf out, flip over onto the parchment paper upside down. Now is the time to carve a quick design of your choice. With a sharp knife or a stencil, cut into the surface quickly and deep enough, because at this point, as the loaf is sitting on the parchment paper, it will begin to lose its shape, so you want to be quick. Now grab the paper by the corners and lower it into a Dutch oven. Repeat with the other loaf, cover both, and bake for 25 minutes before taking the lids off, and then bake another 25 minutes after. The air in your house will begin to smell like fresh bread. Take the loaves out of the oven and admire. This is an incredibly gratifying and rewarding moment. Success. Leave the loaves out uncovered until they have completely cooled. There you have it. Seem hard? I thought so too. But really, it's just a simple process with simple steps to follow, and in a short time, it comes naturally. Sourdough is not only relatively easy and cheap to make, but it is also hugely beneficial to your health. The amount of gluten-related diseases have skyrocketed since the 1950s, seeing more and more people allergic and getting sick from eating bread. This is hard to believe, as bread has been our staple food for nearly the entire time humans have walked the earth. Do you think if everybody was eating organic sourdough bread instead of bread made with commercial yeast, there would be as many people getting sick? I highly doubt it. A real loaf of sourdough bread made with organic ingredients will almost certainly not disagree with your body, and the fermentation will do wonders to your stomach and overall health in general. A loaf of sourdough is a great gift and a welcome addition to any dinner table. Bring your bread to sell at a local market or just keep for your own family. The choice is yours, and so are the rewards. I urge you, do not be turned away by the unknown. Reach out and join the revolution, because you too can make your very own sourdough bread. Thank you very much.